Live. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the No Limit Fantasy Sports Podcast. Breaking news live on the YouTube channel. I just got the alert right now. Straight from Ian Rappaport. Le'Veon Bell has been downgraded from questionable to out. So Le'Veon Bell is out. He's not playing week 14. Little bit breaking news right there. I guess not a big shock. I thought he was going to play through the illness, but he is not. Expect a good dose of Bilal Powell and a little dose of Ty Montgomery for the Jets backfield. On this podcast episode, we're live streaming live on YouTube, and you can find the audio podcast on all the major platforms. We're going to be talking about identifying contrarian picks, how do I do it, how you should do it, identifying chalk picks, some traits for GPP, some traits for cash. But yeah, you know, what makes a contrarian pick, what makes a chalk pick? I think we all have some idea, but I'm going to kind of break it down scientifically, but also pretty simple. You know, just go over some patterns I see. And also, I am at a advantage when it comes to identifying chalk and GPP because I just open up my inbox or look at some of my comments, and you get like thousands of them every week, and so I get to see what people are thinking. You know, like a lot. Like for instance, this week it was a lot of talk about Dak and Kirk Cousins. It was a lot of talk about Alexander Mattison. Like everyone's talking about Alexander Mattison. People are talking about Lockett. So I get to know that, and that does put me at an advantage because I am a social media influencer, professional fantasy analyst, so on and so forth. But that doesn't mean you can't do something very similar. You can just hop on Twitter, do some quick Twitter searches, follow some accounts, look at some of the replies people are getting. Like if you follow TMR, Talented Mr. Roto, if you follow Matthew Berry, if you follow Adam Rank, just look at some of the replies they're getting, some of the comments. Basically the same thing as I'm doing. Just people don't think, just people don't do that. I'm pretty much forced to answer the same question over and over and over again. Like I got question asked 5 times within 1 hour. Do I start Dak Prescott or Kirk Cousins? So, like, I'm forced to see it, but you can easily take 5 minutes, 7 minutes, and get the same exact info I'm getting, see what the hot topics are, what people are talking about. Not necessarily what's on TV, like not necessarily like a meme of Dak doing that dancing hip warm-up. I'm not talking about, like, what's, like, super hot right now, but just what people are thinking. What's that called? Public perception, public opinion, right? Once you get to know that, you get to know, that player is going to likely be more chalk. He's going to be owned a lot more. Okay, so I have a picture of Carlos Hyde here, but I guess the big news is Lev Bell. So yeah, that just changes everything. It literally happened 30 seconds before I was about to go live. It happened at 4:59 p.m. I saw that Lev Bell is going to be out, and then I go live at 5 p.m. So yeah, pretty crazy. Still, all right. Let's talk about identifying contrarian picks and chalk picks. There's some obvious things like, okay, this player, like, value is a great way to identify cash. So if just for some reason a player is super cheap and going to have a super good game, obviously he's going to be chalk. But some traits that people may not really know is if a player just had a bad game, even for 1 week or especially 2 weeks in a row, people are going to be off of that player. It happens so fast, so bad. And that's why I like Carlos Hyde. And he's not going to be that contrarian. Okay? Because we identify that the Texans, if we look at the Vegas lines, I talked about this before, look at the Vegas lines to help us get some of our baseline projections and the game script, see what's going on. We can see that Houston is heavily favorited, one of the more lopsided games on this slate. The other two lopsided games are really the Packers and Vikings, and then followed by the Texans. So Texans are favored to win by 9 against the Broncos. Broncos not that great at stopping the run. They have allowed a good amount of fantasy points to running backs. Not every single week, but a lot of weeks. Like, they've shown that the running back can attack this defense. Carlos Hyde is cheap. I like that. But really why I'm putting him more in the contrarian category, and this is more so to make a point, right? Like I'm saying, he's not going to be that contrarian. How much is Carlos Hyde? 4,500. And with Bilal Powell, actually, people picking Powell, this guy might be pretty. He actually might be contrarian. So, dude, where is he? I can't even find. So, yeah, Carlos Hyde. Look, last game, 3 fantasy points. The game before that, 7 fantasy points. But he's been known to be okay. 12 fantasy points before that against the Ravens. Their defense is decent against the run. And then we have Jaguars defense allowing Hyde to score 17 fantasy points. And he's had a game with 21 fantasy points. So he's okay. He doesn't have huge upside. But in this type of game where he might be able to get 2 rushing touchdowns, it will be the first time this year he does that. Hey, I like him. And now that we got word about Le'Veon Bell being out, guess who's going to be chalk? And that's exactly what I was going to talk about before I got the news. Bilal Powell is 3,500, I believe. Yes, going off memory. So Bilal Powell is 3,500. Jets, Dolphins. So obviously, if a stud running back is injured, let's say Dalvin Cook wasn't playing, obviously Alexander Mattison would be super chalk. And now that Le'Veon Bell isn't playing, Bilal Powell will be sort of chalk here. Because his price is so cheap, 3,500, basically minimum priced in DFS, a lot of players are going to be picking him. So value, like if a player is injured, then the backup running back, that's how you identify chalk. But yeah, easy way and what I talked about, like what people are talking about. Just go on social media, look at some comments, look at some replies, see what's buzzing. Not the trending, not the super viral stuff, just like the comments, like people like me and you, just regular fantasy players, season-long DFS, like what questions are they asking? Who's getting the buzz amongst those talks? Who's public perception? And yeah, contrarian, that's like the easiest way to identify contrarian. Who's picking who. A lot of times if you do hear names on podcasts, so like if the same name appears, so like if I talk about Carlos Hyde and then 2 like Sirius Radio talks about Carlos Hyde, a couple DFS podcasts talk about Carlos Hyde, a YouTube channel talks about Carlos Hyde, then more people are actually going to be picking him. This is statistically proven. So that's another way to identify, who's buzzing, who's going to have a higher ownership. I can't always say that a player is necessarily chalk or contrarian. Sometimes it's not that obvious. Like, for instance, Hyde, I thought he was going to be sort of contrarian, like not owned a lot. But now with Bilal Powell being picked more, now he's going to be even more contrarian. He's going to be even more less owned. So, yeah, I like Hyde. Decent price. We have people picking Bilal Powell over him, obviously. He had a couple really bad games as far as fantasy points are concerned. The game script points towards him doing well, and I'm going to be honest, it's not the best pick. I like it because people won't pick him, and I'm really banking on him getting 2 touchdowns. If he doesn't get any touchdowns, he is touchdown reliant, then this pick will be an F-. It will completely fail. It won't be good. But that's what we like in GPP, right? We go for the risk here. Some other picks. I'm going to keep this podcast short. I want to go over my picks. But yeah, that's how you identify contrarian and chalk picks. I do like Lamar Jackson this week, but he's going to really have to rely on his rushing skills. We see that, he can get you 90-plus rushing yards any given week. But, oh, man, you're going to really have to rely on it this week because it's a bit windy. He's playing in Buffalo. It's going to be a low-scoring, slow-paced type of game, a lot of run plays. We'll see a lot of Mark Ingram. We'll see a good amount of Gus Edwards probably. And we're going to be seeing a heavy dose of Singletary, more than likely. I do like Aaron Rodgers going against Washington's defense. Deshaun Watson is great, but like I said, the Texans will probably have a lead and just run the clock out. So no bonus points for you in the fourth quarter from Deshaun Watson. So he doesn't have that edge. Still, he's bound to gift you 20, 27 fantasy points, somewhere around there. There we go. Like he got 27 against the Raiders. Yeah, that's about, I project him to do something like that. Yeah, maybe like 27 or 22, something around that range. What else we got? I'm really excited about Sam Darnold. I think he can do some things. Going up against the Dolphins, they only had 2 weeks, the Dolphins defense that is, that they did okay against the quarterback. One was against Sam Darnold. I think he'll do well. Like we're talking about, what are we talking about? 10 weeks? 10 times out of 12, the Dolphins defense allowed the opposing quarterback to ball out in fantasy. Sam Darnold, why not? Sam Darnold is very inconsistent. He's very boomer bust. He's very up and down. Look at this. 22 fantasy points, -6 fantasy points, 12 fantasy points, 21, 25, 31, 10. So very up and down, very unreliable. We love that in a GPP. And oh yeah, one thing I did want to mention about Contrarian and Chalk, why we even talk about that, you want to have some Contrarian picks in big pool GPPs. When you're in a small pool GPP, so let's say 1,000 or less entries, you don't need to be that contrarian at all. You do need upside, so risk is good, boom or bust is good. You don't necessarily have to be contrarian. Maybe one contrarian pick is good in any GPP. But in bigger pool GPPs, you may want to have 1 to 4 contrarian picks, let's say. Because those contrarian picks, if they do well, you'll rise straight to the top, and that's how you win big. Because everyone knows, okay, everyone's going to be big in Lamar Jackson. Like, that's no secret. Those picks that everyone knows, like, chances are if you pick all those players, you're probably not going to win. Like, that's just how it is. Because 100,000 other people, 10,000 other people, 3,000 other people are going to be picking those same players. So when that guy goes off, you'll rise up on the ranks a little bit. But if you got a contrarian pick, it's risky. They'll go like, that player does well, you go way off the charts, straight to the top. And let's go to some more picks here. Christian McCaffrey, I'm on him this week. I'm doing it. I think he's worth the high price, 10,300. I'm on the C-Mac hype train. Who else we got here? Derrick Henry and Fournette are both okay. I mean, I like them a lot. I project them to do well. I also project the ownership to be very high with them. So that's why I'm going a little cheaper on the Aaron Jones hype train. And basically same exact scenario with Carlos Hyde here. I mean, it's two totally different running backs, but if we're looking at what I'm talking about as far as ownership and as far as performance, he had 2 bad weeks. So average about 5 fantasy points the last 2 weeks against the Giants and Niners. That means his ownership's going to be down a little bit. A very up and down player. We've seen him get 40 fantasy points, 50 fantasy points, and we've seen him get 3 fantasy points multiple times. Good matchup against Washington. Jamal Williams was hurt, but now he's completely off the injury report, so let's see what happens. I am not really on Jamal Williams this week, but I do suppose he's a good rotational player. Yeah. Like on some sites, I don't think he has the Q next to him anymore, the questionable tag. Jamal Williams is around 4,500, maybe 4,600. Yeah, he's 4,800, so he has a probable, so he's good to go next to his name. And yeah, we talked about Bilal Powell already. He's 3,500. So Darren Williams, Chiefs running back, is on IR. Just a little bit news for you. Damian Williams has already been ruled out. So it would be the 3 running backs on the Chiefs are in order of, the totem pole, the depth chart. Number 1 is LaShawn McCoy, 4,400. Number 2, Darwin Thompson. He's 4,000. I don't even know where is. I don't think it's worth finding him. If he's on here, he's super cheap. I don't think he's gonna be. I don't think you can even pick him. He just got signed a couple days ago. I actually know a few people that know Spencer Ware, so might have to hop on a podcast with Spencer Ware. So Spencer Ware is the 3rd string running back on the Chiefs. What else we got here? Wide receivers. Mike Thomas's price went down like $900. That's a big difference just because he had one bad game and now he's got a tough matchup. So now he's all of a sudden affordable. And then I just wanted to mention that. Price change. Price alert. Christian Kirk is super cheap, 5,200. Even though he's great value, I don't think people will be picking him a lot. Again, because he had one bad game. That's how we do it. So Christian Kirk, talk about boom or bust, right? 3 fantasy points, 17 fantasy points, 8 fantasy points, 15 fantasy points, 40 fantasy points, 10 fantasy points, 5 fantasy points. Very up and down player, but on a team that runs a lot of plays, fastest tempo, very up-tempo team, the Arizona Cardinals, a team that throws the ball a lot. I don't think they attempt the most passes per game, but they're up there. Last time I checked, they were top 5 or top 3, something like that. It could be number 1 now because they run a lot of pass plays, and they do run a lot of plays. So it is a friendly offense for quarterbacks and wide receivers, and they don't really use the tight end. And then everyone is talking about A.J. Brown. See, this is my position. See, people talk about A.J. Brown a little bit. He's 5,300, so his price is okay. Everything's okay with him. But you know who's cheap? No one's talking about is Corey Davis, 3,900 going against the Raiders. Had some really poopy games, but has some hope with Tannehill, man. I think he can do some things. He had a 20-point game with Tannehill. He did have another 20-point game with Mariota, but that was when the Falcons were just atrocious. So we know he can do it. This is kind of, I'm not relying on him. I by the way, if you don't know, I like GPPs. I like winning big. I like taking risks. That's what I like. That's why I'm picking GPP players here. For tight ends, pretty much a crapshoot between these top guys here. A lot of good ones. I love Jack Doyle, though. Price 4,600. No Eric Ebron, no T.Y. Hilton. They're missing a couple more wide receivers. And so Jack Doyle, he just got an extension to 3 years. He got that bag. He got paid. Proud of this guy here. He's pretty good, man. And him and Jacoby Brissett can make some really sweet PPR music. So I like Jack Doyle. Vance McDonald has a great matchup, although he's only had about 1 good game and about 10 really atrocious games. So let's see what he can do. Oh, and if we want super cheap tight end, I do have 2 that are really, really good. Do I have Higbee's price? What's Higbee? I'm just curious. Oh, I think that Rams Seahawks game Sunday night. That's why I don't have him here. I was like, where is he? Like, I should at least write down Higbee. So Higbee, I don't think he's in the main slate. That's why I don't have him down. I do have Jonnu Smith, though. We're talking about the same team, the tight ends here. If you want a contrarian tight end, here is one right here. Delaney Walker's not playing. Adam Humphries, wide receiver, is not playing. Delaney Walker's the tight end, by the way. Jonnu Smith has done nothing the last couple games. He's basically averaging 1 fantasy point a game. Last couple games, averaging about, what is that off the top of my head, like 3 fantasy points the last 4 games. We know he can do it. Obviously, there's a risk, but I see a risk with every single tight end, basically. That's just how it is. And, you know, those top tight ends, they'll probably do very well, but then you're paying up for them. 3,100 Jonnu Smith. He's going to be super contrarian. No one's going to be picking him. Great matchup against the Raiders. Raiders have always been bad against the tight end, and this year they're pretty bad, but historically, like the last 3 years or so, they've been terrible at defending the tight end. They allow so many points to tight ends in fantasy. Derrick Henry, maybe he's a little bit tired. He had a little hamstring injury. I'm not really. I guess I'm just trying to make my point. Like, I'm not like, I love Henry this week too, but I'm just saying that's a little bit added risk. Henry's got a huge workload. He's a big dude, and he's been getting it every single game. We've hardly seen Dion Lewis. This whole team has been Derrick Henry, Derrick Henry, Derrick Henry. Play some defense, swap out the quarterback, put Mariota on the bench. But the real reason is, you're probably wondering why I even talk about Jonnu Smith, because he's been kind of whack. He's unreliable. Well, if we're talking contrarian, I like him because for 2,500, Ian Thomas is going to be not super popular, and I'm not going to be able to find him because he is minimum price, so I'm going to have to go through a bunch of tight ends. So Jordan Thomas, 2,500. Oops, not Jordan. This is wrong. Ian Thomas, 2,500. Panthers tight end Greg Olsen is out. And Ian Thomas has been known to do it. Not this year, but I've seen him in the past. Who do I project to have more fantasy points? I would say Jonnu Smith, but it's really close. I feel like Ian Thomas has a great matchup. Could be a high-scoring game. He can do a lot of things. And then I got Jonnu Smith. I guess I'd probably say Ian Thomas has a higher floor. So you could use him more in a cash game. Yeah, if it's a cash game between Jonnu Smith and Ian Thomas, no doubt I'm going Ian Thomas. I'm investing less of my salary on the tight end position, and I'm going with the one that has a higher floor. I trust him a little bit more, and that's gonna save me $600 of salary cap relief. So Ian Thomas, 2,500. More people will pick him because he's cheaper. So I'm going with the less value tight end, Jonnu Smith, 3,100. That's why I like Jonnu Smith. I feel like he'll be a little bit more contrarian. And the ceiling is about the same. I'd say Jonnu Smith has a slightly higher ceiling. So perfect for GPP. Less ownership, higher ceiling, lower floor. There you have it, my GPP tight end of the week. Ladies and gentlemen, Jonnu Smith. All right. And defenses. I love all these defenses at the top. Packers D, 4,000. Vikings D, 3,800. Browns D, 3,600. Steelers D, okay, 3,500. Texans D, really good at 3,300. And then we have a super good value defense. Jets D, 3,200 going against the Dolphins. That's my favorite defense this week. Another option, Ravens Bills game could be low scoring. They're both priced 2,900. Bills D would be an extremely good contrarian. We don't need to be contrarian on defense, no matter how big the GPP pool is. But still, 2,900. They won't be owned much because you got 2,900. The Ravens are favored to win. They have to score more fantasy points. But the Bills, will this be the first team to actually stop Lamar Jackson? Probably not. But they do have a good defense. I'm just saying that they will be contrarian, and that's why I like them. And they're fairly cheap, about mid-priced actually, to be fair. Titans D, 2,600 going against the Raiders, not too bad. And for a cheap defense, I really do like the Bucks at 2,300 going against the Colts. Colts shouldn't score too many points. They're not going to really do it through the air because they just don't have the weapons. When Hilton is hurt, that's really hurts the entire offense, because even if he's a decoy on plays going deep, that opens up everything else underneath. And so it's going to be a lot of Dinkin and Duncan. It's going to be a lot of Marlon Mack, maybe a little bit of Jonathan Williams sprinkled in, and a little bit of Nyheim Hines in the pass game. And should I mention them? Should I do it? Chiefs defense, 2,200 going against the Patriots. I don't really like it. I think the Patriots will win this game at home in Foxborough. It's so tough to beat the Patriots in Foxborough. It's so unlikely that Bill Belichick will lose 2 games in a row. And everyone, what they remember, like you had a bad food or something. Like, I know someone that choked on some chicken skin or something and will never eat fried chicken. You know, it just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Or just like one thing you remember. Us humans and our memories are so weird. What everyone remembers from the Patriots-Texans game is that the Texans out-Belichicked the Patriots. The Texans whooped on the Patriots. The Patriots did well. And then they most certainly remember Brady losing his cool and yelling and telling his receivers to get more separation and be faster. And that's just what people remember. But the Patriots almost won. They kind of found a way to get back. James White went off, and Edelman got completely shut out that game, yet he still scored a touchdown and did very well. It's kind of weird. It was very similar to the Super Bowl when they beat the Falcons. They were getting whooped on, and then James White went off, and then Edelman did something, and then they almost recovered the onside kick with 50 seconds, and you know Brady was going to score. So all I'm saying is they're not doomed. They're not. They're not doomed. It's not up to the Patriots' par how they played. They did get out-coached, and they did lose. But you got to think, next week it's going to be different. And so what I'm doing here is I'm definitely arguing against this pick. But still, Chiefs defense playing better. We've seen the Patriots offense struggle. And they are super cheap. So I did want to mention them. And I guess I did want to talk about the Patriots game. I figure it's going to be a big game. It's one of the biggest games. Chiefs, Patriots. It's going to be very exciting. You know, game of the week. If you want to talk game of the week or whatnot, that's got to be a top of the list. What else would be the game of the week? I'm definitely looking for it. Ravens, Bills. That's a game of the week there. Saints, Niners. That's another game of the week. What else we got? As a fantasy guy, I'm really into the Vikings-Lions game, but I get, that's the most lopsided game of the week, I think. Oh my God. Rams, Seattle for sure. And Patriots, Chiefs for sure. And I guess we got to kind of include Eli Manning going up against the Eagles. That's not that bad because Eagles might get in playoffs. Eagles and Cowboys, I think they play week 16. If not, it's week 17. But I'm pretty sure I just saw it. Week 16, they play each other. And the winner of that game is probably the one that's going to win the division, NFC East, and probably go to the playoffs. I think it's going to really come down to that game because it's so close. Both teams keep losing. Let's see who makes it to the NFC East. I saw a typo today that said NFC least. Like Washington, if they win out, they still have a chance to make the playoffs and win the division. But they called the division NFC least. That was a stupid typo. But it made me laugh after I read it a couple times. I was like, what is this? Anyway, guys, that's going to do it. Make sure you guys do check out NoLimitFantasySports.com. Come play on there with me. My username on there is Fantasy Couch. You can also follow me on social media at Fantasy Couch, Twitter, Instagram, so on and so forth. My name's Hussein the Brain. Check us out. NoLimitFantasySports.com. Lots of good contests. Lots of free rolls too. So why not play? You got no excuse not to play on another site. Take advantage of the awesome promotions and free rolls they have. And the free rolls on there are actually pretty good. They're not that hard to win. And they do give out quite a bit of prizes to the top winners. So definitely come check it out. Play with me and other people on there. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, No Limit Coin, No Limit Fantasy Sports Podcast. Subscribe to the podcast, No Limit Fantasy Sports Podcast, on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and of course, Apple Podcast. Wish you guys all good luck this week. It's a crazy week. I already know it. Last 2 weeks have been a little predictable for me. I don't know how. They seemed that I wouldn't be predictable, but they are. This week probably won't go how we see it. It's going to be a lot of craziness, I bet. All right, guys. Peace.